All right. Hello and welcome to the Freedom Seeker Show, the talk show where women share their experiences in an unfiltered way, and by doing so, empower other women to do the same. I'm here today with the beautiful Robin Joy, life and sex coach, desire map facilitator, and yoga studio owner. Welcome, Robin. I am so excited to have you on the show and to talk with you today. I am very, very interested, especially to see if you can share not just your journey and your experience, which I'm very interested in hearing, but also I'm interested in you sharing what inspired you to study tantric with the Tantric Institute of Integrated Sexuality. Is that here in Calgary, or where was this?
This is actually online. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's I guess it's a virtual school. There's not an actual facility, but my teacher is Layla Martin, and I would not put it past her to have an amazing facility within the next 5 or 10 years, because the school is growing. The interest in the work that she's sharing is growing. And but it was online. And what inspired me is actually, it's an interesting story, because I sort of meandered my way into it. I was experiencing which is, I think, fairly common among yoga teachers, some serious burnout, because I had just opened my studio, and of course I live in a small community, so it wasn't like I had droves of people, but I was still teaching, 4 to 5, 6, 7 classes a week. It would depend on the week, but I was teaching a lot, and I didn't have any subs or anyone, because it was just me. I'm the only yoga teacher in this community. And so I was working my butt off. I thought, okay, I need to lead a teacher training. I need to train some teachers. And I have some people to support me. But a 200-hour teacher training is a massive undertaking. So midway through that training, I was giving, and totally was not giving anything back to myself. I wasn't doing, I was maybe doing some yin yoga, maybe a little bit of flow here and there. But for the most part, my focus was on making sure that the people that had paid me to learn how to teach yoga were getting a great experience. And I was just burned out. I was exhausted. I started to actually just hate yoga and hate people who practiced yoga. And this was a passion. Yoga had been my passion for years. So it was not like me to disconnect so much from something that felt so close to my heart. And so my husband said, hey, you know what, why don't you go on this retreat? He had just been on a retreat with the same teacher. She was doing a more general retreat. He said, why don't you just go and just do something for yourself? And so I went. And the retreat was a tantric retreat, which was actually not planned and not something that I had, I was curious about Tantra. I had just started reading about Tantra. And so I thought, okay, well, this will be good. And the retreat itself was amazing. There were some big experiences inside that retreat that made me realize that focusing on myself would probably be a good thing. But the real magic happened was I actually was staying, it wasn't a stay-in retreat, so I was staying at my sister's house. And it's like, when you're lying in bed and you're away, and it's like, okay, well, I'll check my phone. And on Facebook came an ad from my teacher, Layla Martin. It was a Goddess Masterclass. And I was, what is this? And so I signed up for the masterclass, and then followed the rabbit hole that is her YouTube channel, and was, okay, what is this magic? And can I have it in my life right now? So I watched the masterclass. And so I came back, watched the masterclass, and she introduced this tool called the jade egg. And my initial thought was, why have I not heard about this? Why is this not something that every woman knows about and is practicing? Because this feels like it might actually be like the miracle solution to all of my problems. And so I bought the egg and started using it, and it was a slow start for sure. I was doing self-directed learning, but I would say within a month everything changed. And I knew that this tool had to be something that I shared, because it is yoga. It's essentially it's a form of yoga that connects women very, very deeply to their bodies. And that just lit me up, because I had already had this passion for yoga, and the energy of it started to come into my teaching, and my yoga teaching transformed, and my life transformed, my relationship transformed. And I said, I need to teach this. And literally a week after I said that, I was kind of looking into programs. Layla sent out an email. She was taking her first applications for the very first run through of her sex, love, and relationship coaching program. And I've never done this in my life, but I didn't even consider. I just hit apply. I didn't look at the sales page. I don't think she even had a sales page. It was like, hey, I'm just trying this thing.
Yeah.
I hit apply, and within a week, had a call with one of her team, and I was in the program. It was a massive investment that I was not really ready to make. But it was just I just followed the breadcrumbs, and it ended up being one of the most profoundly impactful, amazing decisions I've ever made. So that's how I found
love that. There's so many points right there that I love to deep dive in.
Yeah.
So maybe in essence of time, because there's so much we want to talk about. Can you just quickly comment on your experience with following the breadcrumbs? Because I work with so many women that, are almost paralyzed in wanting to make the right decision and let all of these different things get in the way. What I loved hearing you say is I didn't even look at the sales pitch. I didn't even look at the price. None of this mattered. What mattered to me is that this was what I knew in my heart of hearts, what I needed right now. Mm-hmm. But what happened when you saw the sales price and when you were enrolled suddenly? Can you just very quickly walk us kind of through how you got, how you overcame?
Yeah, I went to the bank and was like, can you loan me some money?
I love it.
Because I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I just knew that inside of saying yes to this, that it was an investment. And I think we know when the investment is the right investment, because it feels like an easy, full-bodied yes. And if you were to do anything else, it would be painful. And
there's a pain in making a decision. There's a tear of should I not? It does feel very different from the, oh my gosh, I want to find a way to make this work.
Yeah. And those, I think that's really where the breadcrumbs are, is in those ones where, and I mean, I think I had an advantage in the sense that I already had a pretty solid relationship with my body from practicing yoga and from having worked with the jade egg already for a few months prior to her release of the program. So the consultation wasn't so much with my brain. The consultation was with my body. And as soon as I read the email, I felt my heart leap out of my body. I felt my body gravitate toward the idea. And when women can tune into that deeper wisdom, it's so much easier to make decisions.
Sorry, I'm just going back to the card.
Yes. Yeah, so good.
So love it. So love that. So you enrolled in this program because of the burnout that you were experiencing from your yoga practice, and you just knew you needed to tend to yourself, really. And so you followed the breadcrumbs to this what is it called, jade egg, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Like jade as in like the jade gemstone?
Yeah,
Okay.
right here, this little guy.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's genuine jade. Yeah.
So let's fast forward then a little bit, because one of the things that drew me to you when we chatted at the Rise event is first of all your desire map facilitator, which is just amazing, and then you explained to me that your passion really lies in connecting women back with their bodies and with themselves. And immediately my heart leaped out, because this is exactly where I'm at in my life. I want to feel more connected. I want to feel more sensual. I want to just love myself for exactly who I am and how I am. Why do you think sensuality and specifically sexuality is so important for women specifically?
Mm-hmm. I love this question so much. And I think even before looking at that question, the bigger question is, why is it always the last thing that women look to heal? It's, we'll try everything under the sun, every kind of healer, every kind of self-help book. We'll, go to every conference, and it's like this one thing, if we could just connect to our bodies and our sensuality and that aspect of ourselves, you could save a lot of money on coaching and, and on self-help books and on healers, because our bodies have that capacity to be self-healing and to help us to expand into our greatest potential just by tapping into that sensuality. And the reason for that is that the sexual energy, which is what we're working with when we work with sensuality, sexual energy is the exact energy that created you.
So true, yeah.
And so it's really ultimately the most creative force on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's a particular flavor of energy, and you'll notice when people have a good flow of sexual energy in their bodies, because they feel very rooted and grounded. They seem open, and they're magnetic, like they're irresistible. It's like you feel automatically just drawn to who they are, because they have there's a particular feeling tone to that energy, because it's like, it's truth. It is the truth of creation. It is our greatest source of power, and it's our greatest source of healing. And so when we can tap into that energy and be conscious with it, because I mean, a lot of women have a lot of really great sex, and that's an amazing thing. But what if you had a lot of really great sex and knew how to utilize that sexual energy to help to balance you emotionally, to help to connect you to the truth of who you are, to your essence? What if you were able to use that energy to fuel your creativity, to fuel your life? Then everything just turns into just this very, I say life becomes very turned on. It becomes vibrant, becomes alive. Everything seems so much more like there's a deeper connection to your life when you can utilize that literally life force energy within you.
Wow. Like I'm so drawn in right now, because this is very similar to what Regina Thomas Howard talks about, right? Is turn on. Do you believe that, like she describes in her book, that that we have turned off our light because of what women or the feminine has experienced over decades of suppression? Is that why you think, or first of all, I don't think I am the only one, but am I the only one that is not connected to it? Or is that something that like literally everyone comes to you about, is that disconnect from that sexual energy?
Yeah, I think that not everyone is disconnected. I think that there are a lot of women that actually even come to me who say, I have a really healthy, balanced relationship with my sexuality. I just feel like I'm all over the place because, again, it's like, and I say balance, but that's not necessarily balance, but they just are like, they're able to flow pleasure and feel pleasure and connect and be in that space.
Yeah.
But they feel kind of like a mess in their overall life because they haven't been able to utilize that energy in a constructive way.
Oh.
And that's because like we are just not taught, right? Like when I took sex education in high school, like the clitoris was not talked about. Like there was no instruction on pleasure. It was just, that this, like, I don't even think we learned about orgasm. We may have learned about the boy's orgasm, the boy's experience of pleasure, but we definitely never learned about the experience of pleasure that we could have. We never learned about self-pleasure or that we could experience pleasure by touching ourselves. Like that just wasn't even on the radar of our education. And of course, that has to do with the suppression of the feminine. That has to do with the suppression of women, because there is a very implicit knowing in the patriarchy that when women are empowered sexually, they're empowered, period.
In every way.
And that is dangerous for the patriarchy, for women to be empowered, right? That's something that they don't want. So a big part of patriarchy was absolutely to suppress the feminine, and in particular, feminine desire.
Right. Wow. So I don't even know where to go from here because this is already so interesting to me. So why is it that like when you speak of that sexual energy and that connection to it, what immediately comes to my mind is when I was single and on my own, that uh, that that thirst for that connection with my sexual, I felt very connected with my sexual energy when I was single. So, and then what I've experienced in many of my relationships, that seems to kind of dwindle away as I'm in relationship with someone. Is that a common thing? And why is that? Why is it that there's this thirst for, physical contact and energy and sex that kind of seems to go away when we're in relationship?
Yeah. So I think there's a few ways you can look at this. I think the first thing that you could look at is when you're single, there's a biology around, maybe you were younger, or maybe, in being single, there's a biology around your sexuality that allows you to be more open sexually. I think that just makes sense, because ultimately, if the human species were to last, we would want to procreate and to have sex, right? Like that is like there's a biological function to that I think, if we can look at that as being maybe one aspect of it. And then there's the other aspect of it, which is when we're single, generally, maybe we have a job, might have an apartment, but like stress, unless we have a high stress job, stress isn't quite as intense as maybe the stress would be of, managing a relationship or managing a family, or, trying to live inside a unit that requires actually quite a lot of work on top of all of the other expectations that we have as women. So when there is less stress, there's more desire. That is, like, without a doubt, a truth. And, and so if there's not anything sort of outside of, if there's not trauma or anything, then that sort of single life is a life where it feels actually really easy to be turned on, to have sex, and to not have anything that's sort of tampering that. When you first meet someone, though, when you first become attracted to someone, and it's like you just can't get enough, and it's like, oh my goodness, I can't stop thinking about having sex with this person. And that immediate attraction is actually, there's some great thought on that around when you actually feel that initial attraction. It's because you're attracted to one of two things. You would be attracted to maybe they remind you of a parent. And so there's a part of you that's actually yearning to heal that aspect of yourself that was in that relationship. So if your parent didn't give you enough attention, you may be attracted to a man or a woman who doesn't give you attention, because that part of you wants to heal that. And so there's this yearning that is implicit in that. Or it may be that there's a part of yourself that you've just lost along the way. So like maybe the more rebellious kind of aspect of yourself. So when, this is why women become attracted to the rebel, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't have that freedom inside of me. And so there's a longing to have that aspect of freedom inside of ourselves. And so the attraction is really intense. And so that's why when you first meet someone, it's like, there's an arc of attraction that's really intense, and having sex just feels like a satisfaction of that longing, that internal need. But over time, you realize that like, oh, actually this person isn't going to heal this for me. And then they just start to trigger you, right? Because it's like, oh, now they just really do remind me of my father, or like they're an asshole because they keep taking off and they're not actually taking care of my needs, right? Like that there's something inside of that attraction that you realize you can't heal it, and then the sexual desire just takes like plummets, because it's like you realize the truth. And then in that relationship, if it's a long term, if it's a good relationship, if it's it's with a good person, then you can work through that, and you can get desire back, absolutely. But if it's a crappy relationship, it just ends.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's like, at first there is a longing that needs to be met. And then in order to maintain sexual desire in a long-term relationship, the requirement there is to actually commit to it and do work that will help to pique that interest again.
And that's so valuable to hear, that it takes work. I think there's this misconception, for me anyways, that it needs love, or relationships need to be effortless, and I don't think that is necessarily true. Robin, can we go back to that force, that sexual force energy that you spoke about earlier? So I know you have some programs, and I'd love to talk more about those, just to share with everyone how they can tap into that more with you, and without obviously giving away all of your best stuff. What are some of the most common things that you observe when women work with you on getting that, either the balance of the sexual energy, or getting that sexual energy back? And can you also comment on maybe something that every one of us could start doing that might make a difference right away?
Yeah, for sure. So I really, above all things, and and it was interesting, considering, what is it that women actually come to me for? And without a doubt, you would think it would be low libido, or it would be something like that but what I have found again and again and again is that women feel disconnected from who they are, like from their genuine sense of self. And it's like, I'm showing up in this world. I know I can do better. I know I can feel better. I know that I'm letting my thoughts about my body impact how I interact in my life. I know that I'm letting my patterns in relationship impact how I relate inside my relationship. I know, that my trauma is actually impacting how I show up sexually. That these women are like, I feel broken. I feel like it can't just be me. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest healing that I do with women is just to let them see their beauty, and let them see just how amazing they really are. And to do that, like to recognize how amazing they are through just experiencing pleasure. Like, it's actually so easy. The journey is fairly easy. I mean, yeah, there's shit that comes up along the way. There's for sure stuff that comes up that's painful and uncomfortable, and, challenges the women that I work with. But ultimately, the end result is that oh, I can just be me. And it's okay. It's safe to show up in this body just how it is. It's safe to show up and be a woman who asks for what she needs from her partner, from her friends, from her boss. That it's okay, and we can do that, you know, as women. And when women have that foundation to be able to do that, then their whole life transforms. And a lot of women don't necessarily believe me when I say, and it's actually quite pleasurable to get there.
Yeah,
You know?
that's definitely tough for me to believe as well. But especially when you said that like you've experienced this life-altering experience with the jade egg experience. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, like how you use that in your teachings?
Sure. So one of the things that because you had asked about a practice, and one of the practices that I always suggest that women do before they do anything at all in the realm of sexuality is to just start to honor their body in a different way and start to look at their body in a different way. And there's lots of different ways that you can do this. One of the ways you can do this is just by, you know, when you put your lotion on, like actually saying nice things to yourself and loving yourself. But one of the cool things about the jade egg practice that I think has been really transformative for me is that it's not just a standalone, you know, put a rock in your vagina and do yoga thing, right? Like there's a lot more to the practice because it is an ancient practice. It originates, we see the first sort of documented text of the jade egg in 100 BC. So this is not a new practice. This has been around for a long time, and there's definitely, you can see links between ancient Taoism and the philosophy of ancient Taoism and what we do currently in the jade egg practice. And so to know that this practice has been around on this earth for a very, very long time, and that women have been using this practice to help to connect more to their sexual energy and to utilize that sexual energy in a powerful way, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But along with the practice, there are these energy practices. So there are these other practices that you do that help to create an energetic state inside of your body that prepares you for the work that you do with the jade egg. And so one of the most impactful practices that I have ever come across in all of the practices that I've ever taught and learned, yoga, everything, is breast massage. And the reason for that is because it's so simple. It's about 5 minutes a day. It's very simple, just massaging your breasts in one direction, massaging in the other direction, doing a light little bounce, and breathing into your heart. Oh. And for something that is so simple, it has floored me just how impactful it is, because what we're working with is the heart chakra. So we're working in awakening around our heart. Well, that's our capacity to love. So not only does it open us up to feel love and compassion for other beings, that turns right back on ourselves. So if any woman wants to connect to her body and to want to rewire and have a more loving relationship with her body, then breast massage is absolutely the most amazing practice that she can start doing. And that, you know, if it hadn't been for learning about the jade egg, I wouldn't have learned about that practice. And that's one of the first things I share with women, for sure.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing it with us, especially since it is something that is so inexpensive.
Yeah, a little bit of oil.
Virtually.
Exactly.
And something everyone has the capacity to do, because we all have hands and we touch our body. I really loved how you said that, that even just by putting on lotion, how we can be more mindful around what our dialogue is at that point in time, as we're, and this goes, you're right, I've heard that many times in different teachings, when the ancient Ayurvedic medicine, when they talk about warming up the oil and then putting it on your body and just making it a luxurious retreat, right? Rather than, that commercial, I haven't seen it in a long time, but that commercial for the fast lotion where they basically just spray it on and they like, did you ever?
I've never seen that, but that sounds horrible.
It was, and that's exactly what I was thinking. It was like, okay, so here's another way of how we can make this whole thing more efficient, rather than teaching people, not just women, but teaching everyone to take more care of yourself first. And I think that is what I heard throughout this conversation. You say more than once, and that is, heart-centered connection isn't something that is outside of us. It's something within us. And we need to make time for that. Mm-hmm. We need to really prioritize ourselves first. And I wonder if, well, you said it actually, that when we're single, quote unquote, the main focus is ourselves. We're just on us, right? So we don't have, like you said, all these other distractions, all these other stressors, all of this. So I wonder if just bringing back that self-love, self-care component that you would exercise when you're on your own, just for even 5 minutes in the morning, hopefully longer than 5 minutes, but make time for yourself first is basically what I'm saying, right? Is take care of yourself first. Do you meditate first thing in the morning?
I actually do my self-pleasure practice first thing in the morning. So every day when I wake up, I whatever I'm working on at that current time. So right now I'm really focused on jade because I'm launching a jade program. So that makes sense for me to be in the energy of the jade. I'm also doing, interestingly enough, finishing up my training to coach men as well. So I'm doing practices where I pretend I have a penis and testicles and am doing men's practices. But that's my morning is I wake up and I do some sort of self-pleasure practice. So it's an intentional practice, very much like you would practice yoga or meditate. So I consider that to be a pretty, I have a colleague who says that meditation or masturbation is the new meditation. And I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure my husband would get on board with that right away.
Absolutely. I feel like most of us could get on board with that kind of meditation. But it's, and so in the absence of, if I'm not doing a practice, then I do have a formal seated meditation practice where I just connect to my heart and I relax my body and I just call in wisdom. And it's a pretty quick 5 to 10 minute practice, but I much prefer to orgasm while I'm meditating.
I totally hear you on that. I think that's really fantastic. And I think that is such a refreshing way of looking at this. Like what's coming to mind right now for me is I'm a very much a person who encourages journaling. And I remember when like last year, my morning very much consisted of journaling first thing. But I'm wondering if that's still where I need to be right now. Like my journey has evolved because, spending my first hour of the day processing what's right or what's wrong with the world may not be the way I want to set up my day. So, trading that in for an orgasm, I think is a great idea.
Yeah. And because, you can use that sexual energy to magnetize your desires. So why not, if you're journaling, there's probably a very, very high likelihood that inside that journaling, you're writing down what you want. Why not orgasm and think about that instead?
Right.
Because when you orgasm, you're actually in a state of neuroplasticity. So you're wiring your brain through pleasure to be more focused or to be more aligned with the thing that you want. So it makes sense to have a really clear idea of what you want. And why not add pleasure to that?
Right.
and make that journey feel really lit up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds so exciting to me. I wonder, Robin, why do you think it is that some of us are so resistant to that pleasure or that joy component?
Yeah. I think, like anything, one of the books that's really inspired me is, and actually a book that changed a lot for me when I read it this year, was Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap. And I really think it's an upper limit thing, right? Like, it's like, how much joy will I allow myself to have? How much success will I allow myself to have? And, when you start to get to that point where you're feeling like, okay, maybe I'll get there, then something will happen to sabotage. The thing is, like, many of us know very intuitively that our sexual energy is our greatest power and potential. So to actually say yes to that is saying yes to something very, very big. And so that's a huge leap. And so sometimes it's just about building that foundation and feeling ready, and just starting to be like, okay, what is my body feeling today? Can I add more pleasure to my day? What does it mean to be turned on? And slowly just building that sort of threshold to be like, I think I can orgasm my way to success. I think I can do that, but that, it absolutely is, it's a journey that is worth taking. But I think the resistance comes in the fact that it like, we know inside where our power lies, and that's kind of scary for some of us.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the quote by Marianne Williamson, that our deepest fear is not our failures, but our shining our brightest light, right? It's so true. So when we actually intuitively know where our power lies, then it makes sense for us to suppress that the most, so that we can't show up for ourselves. So valuable. Gosh, Robin, I could go on and talk to you about this more, which we will, obviously. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Jade Egg program that you're launching soon? When are you launching it, and how can we find out more about it?
Yeah. So the program is starting actually on September 1st. So I just looked at the calendar, and I'm like kind of freaking out that September is only 2 weeks away. So the actual launch of this first program, so this is the first run of Radiant Women. It's not the last run of Radiant Women. I know that. I do intend to continue running this program on a regular basis. The reason that the program that I wanted to create was an experience that felt like premium coaching, but at a price that any woman, if she was committed to her turn on, could afford. And obviously you would have to have a job, you would have to have a source of income or some sort of means of paying for it. But if it's not a price that is prohibitive. And that was really a desire that I wanted to create space for women to do this work, where it was accessible. And so I decided to create it as a group experience, but that felt like a one-on-one experience. And so it sort of baked into it are opportunities to connect with other women who are going through the program, but that's not necessary. And so it's a 5-month journey, and I take women through what I call the freedom cycle, which is it's actually a 4-step process to healing. And this is something that it just appeared for me. And it's something that I've always done, but I was able to put it into a process. And so we start just by connecting to your body. Like, what is this? And how do I feel? And what's going on? And then we move into the process of healing, because if you have a desire, there's probably things in the way of that desire. What needs to be healed? What needs to be transformed? The jade egg is a wonderful tool to help rid the body of any sort of blockages or anything that's not in alignment. So we use the jade egg as a tool to help process through anything that's shifting through the process of healing. And then we move into the awaken phase, which is where the fun begins. I always say this is where you get to look at your orgasm and, okay, so it's pretty good now. How good can it get? Or I'm not experiencing orgasm. What would it take to have my first orgasm? Like, so whatever the range of pleasure that women want to experience, it can always be improved. You can always have more. So that's what awaken is. And then there's a month of integration, which is over December. So everyone's going to have a super lit up Christmas and holiday season.
And a lot of September babies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Totally. But over the Christmas season, what I'm envisioning for the women who take this course is that they're going to feel very much connected to themselves and their boundaries. And it's not going to be one of those Christmases where they run around all crazy, but where they actually can be present for the experience of being with family. So whatever they celebrate during the holidays, that it's an opportunity to be fully present for that. And then in January, we move into devotional practice. So that's where we use things like sacred sexuality, use the sexual energy to enhance our capacity to be spiritual in our lives, to connect to our divinity, and then also to magnetize, so to use sexual energy as a manifestation practice as well. So that's the journey. And I envision the freedom cycle as something that you don't just do once, right? So you would go around and around and around, and each time it's like this, right? Like you just get deeper and more woke as you go along, and more turned on. But there's one-on-one calls, and then there's group calls, and then there's a whole, like, what do you call it? Teachable platform, like course platform with all the practices. So you would have access to like every practice inside inside of healing. But because of the one-on-one calls, say like you're working on body love or something, then I would say, hey, do these practices. So you would have access to so much so that when you went around the cycle again, you could deepen. But through that first initial round through the course, we would specifically work on your desire, and then you would be directed to certain practices. But you get so much more that actually sets you up for a lifetime of connecting to your sexuality.
So it's like you have access to all of this information once you've joined the program, but the one-on-one calls and the schedule that you have is from September until January.
Yeah, and the course does release in drips, so you would have access to all of the healing practices, or all the connection practices in September, all of the healing practices in October, so that people don't get ahead of themselves on the journey. And the schedule just really allows me to be consistent with the women who join, right? So we know where everyone's at. I can be consistent in what I'm offering and in the calls. And then, of course, if they do want to connect in the optional group, they have that space to be like, hey, how's this practice going for you? And meet other women who are going through that same journey. So
that's always so valuable. I would imagine, or I can imagine from just my experience with the programs I've run, that the first go around is probably a little bit more distant, and then you deepen and you connect more as you go along, because it is something that for some women is very close. Like it's not as easy to talk openly on a podcast or on a video about orgasms and sexual desires. So Robin, what about someone, hopefully this episode of this show will be on the Freedom Seeker show for a long time. So what if someone wants to join later? Do you have a waiting list if they can't make the September 1 start, like if they're tuning in December? Is there a waiting list of some sort on your website where they can sign up to be notified when the next round opens and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So what I actually have on my website is the quiz to figure out where you are on the freedom cycle. So some women have done some work already, and they may be, at the awaken phase of the freedom cycle. So you can take the quiz and see where you are on that cycle. You get a workbook that you can start working with right away that will give you practices that help support you inside of that particular phase of the cycle. And then you'll receive emails, and just automatically with that, you'll receive notification for when I open the doors to the next intake of women for the program that launches next. So taking that quiz is really the best way in, but also just reaching out to me personally and saying, hey, like, this sounds like exactly what I need in my life. And can you please get me into this program the next time you run it? But I also want to say that I do one-on-one coaching as well. So if someone is, wanting something that's a little more intense, a little more one-on-one time with me, there is also the option to work with me one-on-one. I can go through that same journey, but you would get 3 calls a month instead of just 1 call a month with me, and a lot of one-on-one support that would really, so anyone who feels like they really want to make that investment and go into this work, I can intake women on that journey at any point.
At any time. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So just to summarize, the best way to get in touch with you is to go to your website, which is robinjoy.ca, right? And take that Freedom Cycle quiz. That way they're all connected with you. They get an idea of where they're at on their journey, and then while they're on your website, they can see your about is beautiful, by the way. Like, it's just it's a really great story that Robin shares there on how she got involved with all of her life and desire map and sex coaching experiences. And then there's also a button there to contact you and to reach out if you want one-on-one sessions with Robin. So I think this is not the last time we're going to talk about this, because
There's
I think
much to say.
there's so much here, like, so much. And as I am committed to deepening my journey on this with you, Robin, I suspect there's going to be more stuff that will come out that I will want to share. And the Freedom Seeker Show is my platform to share my experiences just the same. So I'm really excited not only to work with you, but also to continue to share this really important information with the women that are connected with us. Because I believe, and I have a strong feeling you do too, that we women hold the key to a better future. If we're okay, our children, our families are okay, and it's this ripple effect that I think is going to make a big difference. I read a quote, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to repeat it exactly the way it was, but the sentiment was that it's not our job to teach our children to be strong in this world, but to show them how they can create or exist within this world and create a better world. That we need to stop focusing on sheltering them and protecting them from this world, and rather show them how they can thrive and survive and interact with the world and create one. And I personally don't believe that's possible if we're not okay. We need to start here first, right? And so women have a very important role, and one that I think goes far beyond just our own pleasure, our own pleasure environment. So thank you so much, Robin, for taking the time to share this with us. Do you want to share one common question that you get that's your most common question?
Yeah, there's 2. I think I when I was thinking about what are the common questions, the big question is, what is Tantra? What is this? And to explain that in a nutshell is, like, for me, very hard, but I always say it's a path to understanding your true nature through your body and through living inside this body in this world.
That's a beautiful summary of explaining that. Sign me up. Yes.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think for me anyways, there is, and just because of how I think it's been misconceived again in social media and so on, there's this immediate like, whoa, okay, let me just step back because we might be going into territory I don't want to be part of. What's the other one that that you
What's
can
a
learn.
jade egg and what do you do with that thing?
That was mine. I'm like,
Yeah, like, what is this thing that you're
you're actually
talking about?
talking about an egg, and it is in jade stone format. Yes, it is.
Yes, yes. And you put it in your vagina. Yeah.
Wow. So, what do you call those balls that is that very similar to that?
I would say it's a very similar practice. The jade practice is, I would say, more deeply meditative. I've never used those balls before. I have used like weighted Kegel balls before, and so
That's
there are practices inside the jade that help you to strengthen. So you can do weightlifting with the jade egg to help strengthen your pelvic floor. I always suggest working with a qualified coach because you definitely don't want to over strengthen. You want to have a good balance. But like I always say, this is yoga, this is yoga, this is yoga. Anything that happens in yoga, which is breathe, relax, and feel and connect to your body, you do with the jade egg practice, and you'll always have good success with the practice. But yeah, so similar in that regard, because there are specific things that you can do to help strengthen or awaken in the area of your, like in your vagina, in your pelvic floor. But I think the big thing with the jade egg that I love is that it is a crystal. And so we're working with the energetic properties of a stone that does have a frequency. And while that frequency isn't actually what changes you, it just reminds you that you also have that frequency. And it supports you to be more in that frequency than maybe you are right now. And that's where I think the real magic of that practice is that you get to vibrate on a new frequency, which is one that is very deeply healing and connected and just very grounded. And I feel like we could all use a little bit of that.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
So let's finish it off. Why is this all so important to you, Robin?
That's such a good question. I think for me, the passion just lies in the fact that I've healed so much in my life over the past 3 years, and it hasn't felt hard. Like it's been painful at times. It's been intense at times. I've definitely had some things come up that I didn't even realize I needed to heal. But the path of the healing has always brought me back to pleasure and to joy and to a feeling of freedom inside my body and a feeling of really connecting to knowing who I am. And I feel like everyone should have that. I feel like everyone should just a taste of that recognition that like you are enough. You are enough. You are whole. You are perfect. You have everything you need. And if every woman could just feel that, like as an embodied knowing inside of her body, I feel like, oh, what a world that would be.
What a world that would be. I so agree with you. So agree with you. And is Joy your middle name?
It is. I used to hate it too. It's so funny. When I was younger, my mom swears that she never did this, but I distinctly remember her teasing me and calling me Robin Joyless because I was so grumpy as a teenager. And so I never liked my middle name. And then it was about a year ago, I was like, I'm actually going to claim this.
Yeah.
I love this. My middle name is Joy. And that is like such a core piece of who I am. And now I feel very blessed that my parents gave me that middle name, and I'm definitely not joyless anymore.
And that was your purpose right there.
It was right there, like right when I was born, the name was given to me, and it was literally, that was my path. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So wonderful. And I'm so happy that you, in such an early time of your life, circled back to what that is, and you've done the work to heal the parts of you that needed healing, for you to step into the light that you shine out, and for how you show up, because I would agree with you that this work is super important. And so I thank you again. I hope that with this episode, we're going to awaken even more excitement around this, and we'll have you back on the show and talk about some more experiences of the jade egg. How about that?
That sounds great. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Robin, and we'll see you on the next show.
Great. You're welcome.
Hey, love, did you enjoy this conversation? Then join in at www.yvonnewinkler.com/blog and leave me a comment of what you liked about this episode and why. If this added value to your life, then please share this with all of your friends on social media and hashtag The Freedom Seeker Show. I really appreciate you watching and helping me spread the word. And as a token of my appreciation for sharing this episode, your name will be entered into my monthly gratitude draw for a chance to win something from my favorite product list. So don't forget the hashtag The Freedom Seeker Show. I'll see you next time. Rise, bloom, and radiate.